Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Teen Wolf, as well as the latest episode of Twin Peaks. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Teen Wolf, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Twin Peaks. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the latest this week's episode of Teen Wolf. A great episode. I'm on top of it all, I'm super glad to have Teen Wolf back. Yes, I'm sad this is the final 10 episodes, but I'm so excited to see how this plays out. They've already kind of set it up at the beginning, kind of letting you know some of the changes that's happened around town. First of all, you have Liam kind of falling apart because his foundation is kind of gone. Hayden's moved away because she went move away to protect her sister. Scott's leaving for college. And then he ends up finding out because Mason's also eventually we're gonna all go to different college. But then Corey's oh, what about us? And it's well, and then Liam's what? You're both going to the same college? It's his whole world is falling apart just because Scott and was always a huge part of pulling him along in this whole werewolf thing, kind of acting as his mentor and teacher. And then Hayden, obviously your girlfriend, of course you're going to miss her like crazy. So it's two big parts of his life are gone now in this instant. So you see him kind of losing control throughout the episode to the point he has to use the mantra again, which he hasn't had to use that in a very long time. Even he was I don't need it. I've never had to use it. And then Scott's say the mantra, and he had to say it because it's his only way of calming down. Just like I said, his foundation is gone, and what kind of kept him collected, is now gone. So now he has to kind of rely on himself. And I think from the very beginning, you kind of already figured that these episodes are going to be a big step of Liam kind of stepping up, because it's no longer Scott's job to protect Beacon Hills even anymore, except he kind of wants to, just because it's kind of he's even asking his mom, Mom, are you good? She's I'm not going to use one of those taser things from Ike and House. She's I'm good. And he's are you really? Well, is that from Mike and House, or is that just hunters in general use? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure they came from Mike and House, but nevertheless, asking Melissa, she's no, I got all these vials, so I guess they're, filled with stuff to fight the supernatural. And he's where'd you get this from? She didn't really give an answer. I immediately go most likely from Argent, because let's not forget there was a little bit of a thing there. So we never saw him pop up this episode, nor did we see Sheriff Zelensky either. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah, the only people that's really concerned, obviously, is Mason and Liam and Scott and Lydia, because they're the ones kind of yo, something's kind of going on here, but no one else wants to bother with it. You even have Lydia being okay, Mom, here's a list of supernatural people in Beacon Hills, specifically students. And she's nope. What do you mean, Mom? It's no, I get it. You guys are connected to that world. I'm worried about you and your friends, sure, but I'm worried most about you. But the thing is, I won't have to. You're going to be 3,000 miles away at a different college, so this is no longer our problems. I don't have to worry about it. Which I immediately if you're going to teach in this town, you're going to have to worry about it, because Beacon Hills, it's literally called Beacon Hills because it acts as a beacon to the supernatural. Even more so after the whole situation with the Nemesis, looking for it, Scott, Allison, and Styles all kind of made Beacon Hills in fact a beacon. But I think it was always a beacon for supernatural, but it's even more so. That's what kind of drew Parrish, for example, to Beacon Hills. Was just after that, it was yeah, something just kind of pulled me towards town. I'm not sure what it was exactly. So even if you think it's no longer going to be your issue, it's definitely going to be your issue, because there's probably going to be other supernaturals that come to that school. There's, as the way Lydia puts it, there's already supernaturals already there, the ones that even her mom probably is not familiar with. But still, no one wants to deal with this whole situation, especially Malia. She's I want to go out, go to Paris, find me a guy, find love, essentially, She just kind of wants to move on with her life. She doesn't want to worry about Beacon Hills anymore, but everyone else is kind of worried about it. But obviously, Scott and Lydia are kind of yeah, we've spent so much time worrying about this town. Of course we're going to worry about it, especially because our families are here and everything, In her case, her mom, and for Scott's case, his mom as well. So, but what was really interesting about this episode is we have a new Hellhound pop up. He's after Liam specifically, but it was why is it? Apparently, after everything that they did, it seems they've drawn something escaped from the riders. It got out the moment like they got all of Beacon Hill, like got everyone out from the riders. And when they did that, they let something else out. Which later on you have Lydia being like, yeah, that's not a surprise, because what we did was very unnatural, and there is always a price to pay with this situation, stuff they do. Like, for example, the price they paid with the whole Nemetot situation is there was always going to be a dark stain on their hearts, and it kind of had, like, you know, effects on them and everything. And I guess you could possibly attribute that to Allison dying too, but like, oh yeah, it's kind of like an after effect of what they did the previous season. Maybe, you know, maybe that's just kind of, you could always look at it as an isolated thing, but there will always be the price to pay to compensate for. That's a pretty big thing they did. They literally freed an entire town. I don't know if it was like everyone, or is it just, I think by the time, because everyone in Beacon Hills got saved, but like all the other towns, everyone had already like become Ghost Riders, so it was like no longer an issue, you know, there was no saving them, but saving an entire town is like, that takes a lot. That's kind of not knocking out the balance of things. So I mean, to be fair, though, it's like for an entire town being taken like that, that was unnatural to begin with. So it's like you're kind of screwed on that either way. So, but what's also kind of interesting is like Lydia kind of teleporting, and then she's like in the school, and there's like all these webs around. She's touching them. She hears gunfire at one point, and then she hears the conversation that the Hellhound has with Parrish about them letting something out. It's like the Wild Hunt couldn't even hold it in. Like, you were supposed to ride with the Wild Hunt forever, you know? Like, the fact is you were stuck there, you should have accepted it. You shouldn't have tried to fight it. Because of you trying to fight it and trying to fix everything, you should just accepted things as the way they were. So there's that whole situation. So, I mean, like, what would you expect them to do? So, but the fact that she heard that conversation, as we've seen before, Lydia has had, like, you know, part of her power as a Banshee is kind of predicting the future, because there was that whole thing in season 5 where she was like, I have to help my friends or they're going to die, because she saw what the future kind of held from. Granted, she saw bits and pieces. I don't think she saw the full picture still, like, you know, so it kind of is kind of going along with that. So that was pretty cool. But I also love, like I said, Malia was the most reserved about everyone, to the point, like, Scott's like, yeah, I can't make you stay. I'd hope you would, but if you're not going to, it's okay. And Lydia's about to standing on her way, and Scott pulls her aside, and you're just kind of like, and then she storms back in the room and throws the bag at him, because it's like, damn you for making me feel guilty about leaving. You know, it's understandable you want to move on with your life and everything. And there's even a moment they hear a voicemail from Styles being like, I know you feel like the town's going to fall apart without you, which is kind of like, kind of true to a certain extent. Like I said, this is a big season for like like the main characters making their exit. But at the same time, it's, you know, as I said, like back, you know, at the end of the first half of the season, this would be like, I thought Hayden would be around, but sadly not the case. Doesn't mean she won't pop up later on this season, but we'll just have to wait and see. But it's definitely like big, like for, you know, Liam and Mason to become the new Scott and Styles, because they're like the forefront of their pack. So they're going to be the forefront of their own pack too. I mean, they're still part of Scott's pack, but eventually down the line, they're going to go off and kind of start their own pack. So it's almost, you know, history repeating itself and everything. So it seems, because it almost seems like everything's a byproduct of that Hellhound, but, you know, the rats and stuff like that, kind of going a little crazy, the whole thing with the wolves. But it's like, that seems like it's kind of a nature thing. Like, all the animals in nature's kind of off balance now. So whatever it is here is doing that, and it's leading to everyone, like the animals kind of going a little crazy. Like, there was a whole bunch of dead wolves. There were those rats that kind of ate themselves and stuff like that, as well as the ones that came into the classroom. Like, you would kind of think it was connected to the Hellhound, but the Hellhound was like following the symptoms, you know, of like the imbalance. You're trying to find it out exactly. He thought it was Liam, but he's like, no, it's not you. So the fact is he could sense it. It must be something close by to Liam then, for him to have sensed it nearly. Because I was thinking like, oh, maybe that explains why Liam's having such a hard time controlling it. Besides just like the fact is of just everything changing around him. You know, even Mason has that conversation with him. It's like, you know, things change. It's like, yeah, I know, but it still hurts. It's like I said, like what he's come accustomed to, and that's the sucky thing about life in general. And I think that, you know, that's a big part of this season too. It's like moving on, things changing. As I mean, obviously, it's a big metaphor for the show too, of being like, yeah, things end too. You know, this grand adventure you guys were on is coming to an end. You won't always be together anymore. You know, so. But it was pretty impressive, Lean going toe to toe with that Hellhound, especially after Parrish didn't really, like, he put up a fight, but it was just Liam that kind of wounded him heavily. And it's like, yo, dude, you went toe to toe with a hellhound, didn't even have a Scott with you. And it's like, yo, he was sick. Like, I love that about Liam's fighting style too. Like, just Wolf's fighting style in general, like when they cartwheel and shit like that. And just, he was like clawing at him. I mean, let's not forget, Liam is probably one of the strongest wolves around too, just because of the fact that, you know, he kind of naturally has anger issues. And for him as a wolf, that kind of fuels his strength. So it's one of his biggest, like, you know, issues or flaws kind of works towards him with helping him with being a wolf. So him being kind of unstable at this time and needing to calm himself down, I guess you could argue it's a double-edged sword. It's awesome, you know, when he's fighting, but obviously it sucks when he's like he was at the hospital and all those people around and he had to calm himself down so he wouldn't bear his fangs at people. So, but the question is, like, I was wondering about the whole situation with that hellhound, because he was there since like 1912. He'd been in that volcanic ash for like since like 1912, but he awoken now. Obviously, the imbalance kind of woke him up and everything, but still, it's like, because I don't know how much. I would assume like some good change amount of time has passed since the end of the first half of the season 6A. So. But it's like, why wake up now and not sooner? I'm sure, you know, that's a question they're going to be asked. I mean, to be fair, it was like things were already saying, like, don't leave. Obviously, Lydia kind of got her wake-up call with her own vision, but Scott got it when he was trying to crank up the Jeep, and he couldn't crank it up, and then it cranked up. So it's almost like a sign of, like, yeah, you can't leave yet. So I am curious about that whole, like, hellhound situation. Also, like, in regards of, like, was he already a hellhound before he was frozen, but because he was no longer needed, like, his body heated up and created a hard rock for him to be in stasis unless he needed? But then it's like, well, why are you here and not Parrish's, like, hellhound acting upon this? It seemed like it was more so like his hellhound responded to, like, whatever this thing is, but Parrish's didn't, and then only reacted to him because that moment in the hospital where, like, everyone faded away and it's just like flames in the hallway and he sees the hellhound, and it's like, I'm just curious about that whole situation. Like, you know, was he always a hellhound? Like, I mean, because we know Parrish's situation is that he actually died when he was in the military, and the hellhound possessed his body at the time. So technically, Parrish doesn't exist anymore. But still, you know, it makes you wonder: was it the same thing with this guy, or, you know? I mean, granted, by the end of the episode, he is dead. So I figured there had to be something up with that. I'm not surprised that she's a hunter. I kind of figured she had to be, because she was that counselor lady. Obviously, she was like, oh, what do you want to do with your future and stuff like that? Oh, that's awesome. And she starts pushing that guy's like that Nolan lacrosse player. I thought I called him football player, lacrosse player. She's asking all these questions like, oh, what do you mean about wolves? What other type of wolves are there? It's like she was pushing. I was like, you know too much, because she was even talking to Mason about it. So I think on some level she knows. Because she even alludes to it. She's like, oh, yeah, I see a lot more than people think I see. Because when she was talking to that Nolan dude, it's like, oh, yeah, that thing in the that incident in the library, the animal attack. I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, legitimately, there's been so much crap that's happened in the library. I mean, I immediately figured it out after. I was like, right. It most likely has to be the beast thing, because that was like the most public thing that's happened with a lot of people around. Like the biggest supernatural thing where a lot of people have been around for was the whole beast attack in the library. So I was like, of course that. But it was like, there's so much stuff that's going down in that library on the supernatural scale. But I was like, that was the most public thing. So I was like, of course he'd be specifically talking about that. But the fact is, she was even alluding to it to Mason too, like, oh, you can always talk to me about something. And the fact that she was talking to him like that, I was like, oh, are you actually related or something? The way Mason's just kind of off guard. It's like, no, he must have felt that she was kind of pushing for something. Like, she wanted him to talk. So it's almost like she knew he was human, but she knew he was probably steeped in this whole supernatural thing. And that's the question I'm curious about too. How do hunters feel about humans who hang around supernaturals? In his case, he's dating a chimera and his best friend's a werewolf. So it's like, how would they feel about that? Would they consider, oh, you're a traitor to your kind? Like the hunters, like the hunters have their whole code of like, they only attack when provoked. Obviously, I mean, because the fact of the matter is, like, because we're probably going to have a repeat of Kate with her because she attacked him. He never actually attacked her. Like, the code is you only attack after they attack first. That's what started the whole situation with Peter, was because Kate made the first move against him, just because she, you know, it's just like, oh, they're werewolves, they're monsters, take care of them. This is what we do. It's like, no, we're kind of, they're meant to be more of a shield than just a sharp sword. Like, we protect those who are weaker from the supernatural world, but we don't attack them, because not every supernatural is, volatile or aggressive. So she ended up using obviously some powerful bullets, so that she was even able to kill a hellhound by doing like a headshot. It's like, how was she able to do that? So it's like they definitely got some like upgraded supernatural gear, and you see that moment like she was almost terrified, but then she almost smiles, wiping away the blood. So it's like, I don't know whether that, and then the fact is, the way she was acting, that was probably her first kill, but I think she got that thrill of like, ooh, like, and the fact is, way Lydia is saying it, it's like it's going to be a war between the supernaturals, like what she felt, because you heard the gunfire and everything. It's like, because I already went into this knowing like the hunters are going to be a big deal. I didn't know they were not the only thing. I thought like, oh, this is all, it's kind of almost going back to basics, because that was the biggest thing for Scott and them early on in the show. Season 1 and season 2 was the hunters, but subsequently, since that, obviously they joined forces with the hunters and everything. But I'm curious, is that what they're setting her up to be? Is she like a lone hunter? No, I take that back, because I forgot. There was that whole Deadpool situation in season 4. Right, yeah, where like hunters came after them and stuff like that. So they dealt with it to a smaller scale. That was kind of a whole thing in itself, so I don't really count it. Like full-on hunters was mainly season 1 and season 2, so we're kind of going back full circle. I thought that was cool. They were going to be main antagonists, but it's like they kind of hid away the fact is that there was something more. And what I appreciate is we ended up seeing where Styles was at the very tail end of the episode. It's like, where's he? Oh yeah, he's at training at Quantico. It's like, of course, like, with his mind and his skills at detective, like he is literally the detective of the group. He's the one that helped figure everything out. That's why that whole like Wild Hunt thing was a lot harder for them, because it's like they didn't have Styles there to be like the dude, I got this figured out. Like, I mean, he figured things out, but I mean, he wasn't, I mean, they forgot about him and everything kind of associated. So he's like a very key component to the pack and everything. But obviously the team has their reservations about bringing him in, because it's like, no, he's enjoying his life and we can't bring him back. I mean, especially Lydia's like, we literally almost lost him. It's like, let's not put him in danger like that again. He went through so much because of the Wild Hunt. Let's not kind of throw him in the deep end like that. Like, we'll kind of handle this on our own. It kind of seems like to be the mentality. But it seems like, like I said, you can't escape this. Like, even if they move away, they will always be tied to the supernatural world no matter where they go. I think that's something that this season is also going to hit on too. Because the moment, like, it's like, yeah, all this, and this, and Styles being who he is, and like, oh, answering stuff, like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. From now on, I'll raise my hand. But I also appreciate it's like, and all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, there's this guy we're hunting near the mountains of North Carolina or something, and boom, lo and behold, who is it? Freaking Derek, which I'm not too surprised about, just because I already knew he was like, I already caught him in the previews, but at the same time too, it's like, I'd already read that he was supposed to, like, what I had read originally was that he was going to pop up in the first half of the season. Turns out not the case, but nevertheless, I don't care. Like I said, like, this is the end, so they gotta like roll everybody in and everything. It's like, oh, what's Derek wanted for? What did he do? Mass murder, which obviously we know it's a lot more than that. There's some bad, most likely what I'm thinking it might be the case, because we're dealing with this whole hunter situation. He probably killed a whole bunch of hunters that were coming after him, so it was out of self-defense. But obviously, can't really explain that to people, just like, oh, you just went crazy and started killing some people. So that immediately my head goes there, or at the very least, there's some people that, much like the rat situations, kind of like, it turned into a whole debacle like that, in the sense of like, people went a little crazy, start killing themselves, and Derek happened to be there, so he got framed for him. I'm thinking more so the first, former rather than the latter, so. But overall, such a good episode. Like I said, I will reiterate it again. I'm so happy to have Teen Wolf back. This is going to be a crazy ride of a season. I'm curious to find out like who this like mysterious baddie is, and like how everything will play out this season. I almost completely forgot about giving the coach props at the beginning of the episode. Just kind of like, he's like looking at Scott like, what the hell are you doing? Giving him positive reinforcement? Did I ever do that for you guys? No, like you kind of always kind of constantly tore us down. Exactly, that's what you do. Like, they don't, you don't push people by giving them compliments and positive reinforcement, you idiot. I just love this whole rationale for everything and stuff. So like I said, just a fantastic episode, and I cannot wait to see what the rest of the season has in store for us, especially next week's episode, since literally the next episode. I'll shut up now. And now moving on to this week's episode of Twin Peaks, a very good episode with some very interesting developments on multiple fronts. It seems that Gordon and Albert have taken it upon themselves to bring Tammy into the fold about this whole Blue Rose situation. So trailing it back to basically Blue Books dealt with the whole alien things. It was like the Air Force looking into it for like 20 years, but then nothing really came about it. At least they kind of said nothing came about it, so they kind of dropped it. But then there was like a new group put together by FBI, kind of a secret group to kind of deal with the stuff that Blue Book didn't deal with, and that said group was called Blue Rose, which Gordon put Jeffries at the front of it. Obviously, Albert was a part of it, as well as Cooper. And now they're deciding to bring Tammy in on this. So now in retrospect, I'm like, okay, so it makes more sense now why like Cooper was always more open-minded than most people when it came to circumstances, because it's like he kind of knew there was some like more out there. And so the same thing for Albert and Gordon. I was wondering why they're so like, I mean, I guess it's one thing to know you're investigating something like aliens and stuff. I guess that's a little more easier to grasp, and like something from a different world came and possessed a dude into killing his own daughter as well as other people. You know, the whole Bob situation is probably not the easiest pill to swallow, because it seemed like Albert had a reservation. I mean, more so than anyone, Harry had the biggest reservations when it came to that thing. But even then, Albert was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Albert kind of, maybe at that time, Albert wasn't 100% into the whole Blue Rose thing. But the fact is, they made it seem like he was there with Cooper, so I don't know, maybe he really did step up into like understanding everything so maybe that's why him and like Gordon are more open to the whole like weird things going on in this whole situation. I don't know. They're even temporarily bringing Diane into the whole fold. I assume it's like a keep your enemies close type of situation. It's like they're not letting on to her, letting her know that they know about her circumstances. So, and she's just basically like, yeah, let's rock. Because she's like, what do I get out of this? Well, you get to find out what happened to your good old pal Cooper. And she's like, yeah, let's rock. So it's like, obviously she's going to stay close to them because this also gives her an opportunity. I'm sure she said the whole thing just to make it like more realistic, because if she was all for it, maybe she felt like it'd be too suspicious. So if she's like reserved about like, oh, why should I help you? What am I going to get out of this? So it's like, well, you get a little bit of money and you also find out what happened to your pal. All right, we'll do this. She ends up sending a message to, I'm going to assume it's Cooper, doppelganger Cooper, and she's saying like he's at Las Vegas ? And she's like, they haven't asked about it yet. So is that connected to the whole like, oh, sending the brothers last episode after him thing? Is it supposed to be him kind of being dealt with, or is there more to like what specifically? Because even they're like, what do we know that we haven't asked her yet? Like for her to receive something like that or say something like that, So I would assume it has to have something to do with Cooper, but maybe because nothing happened yet, like there's nothing to report about. Maybe because I don't know. Or maybe they're talking about the fact is maybe they know about Dougie's prints being read, Cooper's prints being, I don't know. I doubt so, because that still hasn't really come back around, because like they say they're going to run his prints, but maybe it's just, it's the system, so it probably takes a while for those to come back, and maybe they haven't really put up any red flags because all the systems are focused on doppelganger Cooper. So it's like, who is this? No, whatever, forget it. Maybe it's a malfunction in the system. Maybe that'll be something that kind of comes up sooner. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see on that front. But I love the whole situation with Gordon. He's talking to that French lady, and just like they're having conversation, and then Albert's like, we need to talk. And then she's taking like, he's like, could you excuse us? Wait for us at the bar. Wait for me at the bar. And then she's like doing everything, putting on her makeup, putting on her shoes, slowly just getting on, like taking the longest freaking time. And the entire time Gordon there smiling, and you have Albert just standing there like sighing and just looking like almost not even blinking. And then you have Gordon turning to him and everything, and just Albert just staring at him. He's like, Albert, she told me about her grandmother or something that worked on a turnip farm, and they're worried about somebody missing. I was like, don't worry, he'll turn up. At first I was like, wait, did he just make a pun? And then there was just silence, and Albert just staring at him. And then Gordon's like, keep staring. It's like, yeah, she didn't get it either. It kind of gets lost in translation. What did you want me to know? And said text message. And then he's like, let me get back to this one. And then Albert's like, what kind is it? It's like, and gives him the time. And then Albert just stares at him. It's like, I don't know how they did that scene without laughing. They probably had to do some moments of just, such a good, just, major props to the actor who played Albert. Just being able to just like keep a stone face and just like staring him down, and just Gordon touch, Albert, I gotta tell you something. I worry about you sometimes. I just like, it's so good. It's so good. I know sometimes Albert's just like, Gordon, I want to strangle you sometimes. If you weren't my superior officer, I would just, You can just see it in his eyes, just like, it's almost like you almost expect to say, Gordon, I hate you sometimes. I really, really hate you. Big thing that popped up in this episode is we had the return of Audrey. She pops up. So multiple things to point out. For one, she's married to a dude named Charlie, but it seems like it's a marriage of convenience, because it's like, he's like, whoa, you're backing out of a contract? She's like, yeah, and Billy, who's missing, and I want your help looking for him. Well, me and Billy, we're in love, and I've been fucking Billy. And he's like, whoa, wait, what? And then she's kind of like, the fact of the matter, you run why it happened? Because you're spineless, you have no balls. It catches you off guard. It's literally the Diane situation. Like, we never knew Diane to really compare, like, who she was before. But it's like, holy crap, you are not the Audrey that we knew. It's like, you are a very different person. Granted, to be fair, they can kind of kick like dialogue up a notch simply because the fact is that it is on Showtime now. I think it was on, what was it, ABC before? It was on, I'm sure, like a much more, like, it was on a primetime television network, so I'm sure they had it, like, plus it was the 90s too, but it's like, now this set in current day, it's like, it's so weird hearing Audrey talk like that, because it's just like, dude, like, what? I mean, it's like, what happened to you in all this time frame? And just like, when did you get married? I mean, it's good to see you're not in a coma, so you came out of that whole bank situation okay. That's good. I bet you were kind of the only one, but still. But then she's like, all right, Charlie, you won't help me? We should go to the row house looking for her. It's like, oh, there's so many woods and stuff. I gotta do my paperwork. She's like, you're just berating him and stuff like that. And it's like, you've never heard Audrey talk about anyone like that or talk to anyone like that. It's like, it's so, what? I mean, to be fair, Audrey was like a high schooler when we knew her. She's like a grown woman now, like an even more grown up, more mature woman. So obviously, you get older, you change drastically, but it catches you. It's like, this isn't the Audrey I knew. But she's like tearing him down and stuff. It's like, I don't know, I love you. I don't know why. I always do so much for you. She's like, oh, what? You want me to thank you like every fucking hour for just being good to me? What? It's like, gosh, Audrey, wow. And then he gets on the phone. She's like, yeah, call up that bitch Tina, because she was the last person they see Billy. But it's like, well, then I heard that from Chuck. Well, you heard it from Chuck about this, that Tina was the last one to see him. But I heard that Chuck stole Billy's truck, but then Billy got it back, but he didn't press any charges, which it begs the question, like, do we know Billy? Have we met Chuck? Have we met Billy? Are these people that we know so far that I'm just completely blanking on? I feel like with the conversation, the fact is they had it there. I mean, maybe that's just kind of an introduction and maybe that has something connected to later on. But for now, immediately in my brain, I'm like, what is that all about? And like, who is Billy? I guarantee you it's probably someone that we've met before, and me just being the idiot just didn't, like, the name didn't sink in or something like that. I don't know. I feel like it might be someone, but, to kind of save myself the embarrassment, I'm not going to say who I think it is amongst people we've already met. There was a whole situation where he's on the phone. It's like, really? Oh my God. Like, I can't believe the stuff that you're telling me. And Audrey's like, come on. Okay, what did she say? You're really not going to tell me what she said. It's like, It's like, and they literally leave the scene with that. I'm like, what? What the hell was that phone call about? I mean, which then also kind of rolls into something else that kind of went down in the episode. It's like about the whole Richard situation. It makes you wonder, was a conversation about that? Maybe not. But we did kind of, like, Frank showed up and he told Ben about the whole thing. It's like, yeah, your grandson was involved in that. Oh, makes matters worse, he tried to kill the only witness, Miriam. Oh, and Ben's like, I hate that. Oh, that stupid grandson of mine. Is like, apparently they haven't really been on good terms since, like, Ben stopped giving him money. But, Ben's going to do the right thing. I mean, granted, who's to say he would actually have done the right thing if Frank hadn't suggested it? It's like, Miriam doesn't have insurance and stuff like that. So, like, no, we'll pay for her bills and everything. Her medical bills. So it's like, but like, once again, we still don't know where Ben falls into this whole situation. Like, previously, the last time we saw him off, he was trying to be good. He was trying to do the right thing. The whole telling Donna, kind of throwing her family into turmoil by telling the truth and stuff like that. Last time we saw, like, Doc kind of adapt. I mean, that's the last time we saw. So, I mean, granted, he looks okay, but we still don't know whether he's trying to be good Ben anymore. I mean, he doesn't seem like this, like, maniacal scheming sleazeball that he was most of the series. It does seem like he is possibly still that same person to certain degrees. Conversation did come up. He was like, yeah, Richard never knew his father, so never had a father. So immediately my brain goes, okay, so he is in fact Audrey's son. So the fact is, I mean, I think Charlie still could apply, but I think it just be, I don't know. The fact is, he went out of his way to say like never had a father makes me, not unless he was adopted. I mean, that might have always be a possibility, but it seems like they're heavily implying that that's Audrey's son, but I mean, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. And then the whole key conversation came up. It's like, yeah, this is the room that Agent Cooper used to be. Huh, that's so interesting. He's almost like, this is weird. How very coincidental that this key happens to show up around the time we start opening cases related to Agent Cooper. Huh, weird indeed. And it's like, oh, let's give this to Harry because Harry would really appreciate it because Cooper was that was his bro, so it's like he'd appreciate it as kind of a souvenir. So yeah, just kind of interesting how things kind of played out like that. So Ben's leaving out the whole like, oh yeah, like Richard showed up and attacked his wife and stole a whole bunch of her money and stuff. So yeah, he left that out of the conversation. But it's like, let me know if there. I mean, I think for one, it's just kind of like, well, that's a family. I mean, he could have said something, but I guess it's like, well, he stole our stuff, so there's. I mean, I guess in that situation, it turns into a whole other thing because it's like, oh, you knew a crime happened, your wife got mugged and threatened, but you didn't say anything. That would turn into a whole issue I'm sure he's not trying to deal with right now. I mean, I'm sure for what also, once again, kind of going back to whether or not he's sleazy or not, it's like, for him, it's like, this is going to tarnish his, the reputation because it's like, yeah, his grandson's out there killing and hurting people, so it's like, crap, that piece of crap grandson of mine. So, and then randomly, we still have Jerry just kind of out of his mind. Can't tell whether he's old or there's something more to that situation. Kind of feel like there has to be since they kind of keep cutting to it, but maybe not. For now, it just looks like he's either super high or just kind of like just way out there. Also, side note, something I forgot to bring up earlier that I just thought about. I completely forgot about the whole like Diane situation when she was at the bar. She was looking up coordinates. It was all the numbers from Ruth's arm from last week's episode. And she puts them in, and the coordinates specifically point to Twin Peaks. So, like I said, everything's going full circle there. So, was that message meant for her? Or was that meant for someone else who left it on Ruth's arm? Like, what was the significance of that? Then we also had the hitman couple killing Warden Murphy right in front of his house. His son came out to find him. That really sucked. Just interesting to hear that callous conversation they had of like, oh yeah, like the husband's like, oh man, I can shoot him in the leg and then you can torture him. It's like, no, I'm hungry right now. It's like, okay. And the moment they're done, it's like, all right, next stop, let's go to Wendy's. So they're supposed to take care of something else too. I think there was like at least 2 more stops they were supposed to make after they deal with Murphy. So I don't think Doppelganger Cooper really expressed like exactly who they would be. So, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see on that front as well. Then we had that whole situation with Sarah earlier in the episode when she was at the store and she started staring at the beef jerky and she started flipping out. She's like, what's up with that jerky? It's like, you turkey jerky? Yeah, it's like, the girl was like, I think her name was like Victoria. She's like, yeah, like, it's regular. It's like the beef turkey, but it's like, I mean, it's like, the other beef, but it's like, made from turkey. And she's like, was that, when did that get here? Were you here when like, she starts talking very erratically, and then she's talking about, you have to run, men are coming. It's like, wait, what? And she's like, the fact of the matter is bad things happen, something bad happened to me. So I'm thinking it's a situation of like, after everything she went through and then just a combination of just being older and everything she's seeing is just kind of, I think it's becoming hard for her to distinguish between what's the dreams and what's reality. I mean, granted, even back then they blended together anyway, so it's hard to tell, but I think that's what she was probably having. Like, so maybe we'll see eventually that some people come to rob the place, or maybe at some point in time in her personal life when she's just out and about, some guys attack her or something. I don't know what that's supposed to be. And then there's the kid Oscar is like, yeah, I got her address, I'll bring her stuff. And later on, when Hulk goes to visit her, there's some shuffling, and he's like, what is that? She's like, oh, it's whatever. And part of my brain was like, they never cut to it, but I was like, does she have that grocery store dude in her kitchen locked up, like strapped down or tied up or something like that? Is that what that's about? Maybe it was just something else, but it's just like, that was kind of a thing that was never really pressed on. I guess because Hulk didn't want to press her too much. It's like, after everything she's been through, she's like, oh, but she's kind of muttering like, yeah, this is a bad story, isn't Hulk? And even Hulk's like, I don't understand. Like, if you ever need anything, Sarah, let me know. She's like, thanks, Hulk. And it just like, I don't know, there's moments where she just seems normal, and then other times she just doesn't seem like herself. So it's hard to say what's going on that front. Because it still feels like they're setting her up to be like, hey, she still sees stuff. Because she was like one of the main people that saw things, you know, other than like Cooper and Laura. There's even a point in the episode, I almost completely forgot about this too, was Audrey being like, she had a dream about Billy. He had a bloody nose and blood coming out of his mouth. And she's like, yeah, dreams tend to come true. I think that was kind of referencing the whole Sarah and Cooper situation specifically, and Laura as well. So that was just kind of interesting to me, like what that's supposed to represent. But like exactly what role her whole situation is going to play in this, I have no idea. I have no idea where the connecting thread is for a lot of these stories. Like you see the main thing with Cooper and everyone else, and you see like certain things like the sheriff's department with Hulk and Frank kind of like, you know, as well as Bobby, all that kind of leading towards Cooper and everything. So obviously the threads are there, but the other storylines are kind of like, where is that going? Like specifically the Jacoby storylines, like where the hell is that going? The whole like his little program of like, shovel out the shit, and he's talking about like these conspiracies and like politicians and stuff and big corporations and stuff like that. It's like it's so crazy because he never used to talk like that. He was a therapist. I guess like he dropped that completely to run his program, which is all part of him selling shovels now. I don't get what that's about, but it's all about shoveling the shit that you're in, double coated gold shovels. I don't know. And Nadine loving the programming, and it's like, okay, what's that supposed to, I don't know. Then there's the whole situation at the end of the episode. Still can never make heads or tails of those or whether those are connected or not. They just seem like one-off things that don't really mean too much. But there's a lady named Angela, and she's into this dude named Clark. But then there's this whole situation on a girl being involved, and her friends are like, oh my god, like Angela's off her meds right now. She might lose her shit. Like she's very unstable right now. And then there's all this stuff about like, well, you can't blame her because the way she found her mom is like, wait, what? We mean her mom. Is that connected to the whole Ruth situation? That's the only... Well, not unless they're talking about... Well, I mean, this is in Twin Peaks, so you would think it had to be something Twin Peaks related. What mom? Do you think Miriam is the mom? But then I was thinking, like, is it the Hastings? But the Hastings don't have children, do they? I don't know. Like, but once again, that's isn't that South? Yeah, that's in South Dakota, not Twin Peaks. You know, you see what I mean? It's like, dude, I don't know. And then that was just kind of it. So I'm like, I still don't understand like what part those things at the end. It seemed like they have story relevance, but they seem like they're so disconnected. Like I guess if you watched them all back to back to back to back, it would have kind of formed something. Once again, this seems like a thing where you have to rewatch everything, like knowing what you know, rewatching everything, and then things make a lot more sense. Because I feel like, you know, I did that with the first two seasons, like rewatching them, things made a lot more sense. Like, you see certain like elements and like, oh, that kind of makes more sense of this, and that. Like, okay, you know, so I'm getting a feeling that this might apply to that. We would just kind of have to wait and see. Like I said, good episode. Still just as confusing as ever to a certain extent. I do appreciate Audrey coming back. Just not in the shape and form I thought she was. I was so sure she was going to be like in a coma because the last time, you know, Doc was up, he was like, yeah. Last time was like, oh, he thought Cooper was there to see her because Audrey was in a coma, which as we see, she's up and about. Probably no telling how long she's been married, and also like the whole thing being a contract, what that's about. So many questions that hopefully we get answers for in next week's episode. Do note, I mean, this is kind of crossing streams a little bit, but Ray Donovan returns next week, so Twin Peaks will be moving up an hour earlier. So obviously for your respective region and time zone, just, you know, remember that Twin Peaks is an hour ahead of time now. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.